Welcome to the Simplify, Lead and Grow podcast, where business leaders share real strategies for growth. Hosted by Steve Kopecki, each episode offers insights to help you simplify, lead with purpose, and achieve success. Get ready for a wealth of knowledge and inspiration. The journey to simplify, lead, and grow starts now.
Hello and welcome. I'm Steve Kopecki, the president and owner of Compass Performance, Inc., an executive and business coaching company. I'm also the host of this Simplify and Grow podcast. At Compass, we work with organizations, teams, and entrepreneurs as they intentionally build a work culture focused on simplification and accelerated growth, building a bridge to profitability as well as a continuous learning environment. Today, my guest is on the Simplify and Grow podcast is Tim Gerritsen, the COO of Lost Boys Interactive. This is going to be a little bit of a different podcast for me, and I'm looking to have some fun with this. It's a remote-first video game developer with a talented team of employees across the U.S. and Canada. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Hi, thanks for having me, Steve.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about your business and what
Sure.
inspired you to be a part of this great company?
Sure. So I'm, as you said, the Chief Operations Officer for Lost Boys Interactive. We are a game development studio. We're based in Madison, Wisconsin, but we're remote first. So we are all over the United States. I do have an office. I'm just hardly ever in there. Usually I'm working from home, as are most of our employees. What we do is we are a game developer, and we're predominantly what's called a co-development studio. And games, most people don't, I think, realize how big games have become. The typical budget on what we call a AAA game, which are the big games that come out every year, they tend to run in the $100 to $200 million range. So 100 million to $200 million range. So they are very expensive. It's like making a movie, and so very complicated. I mean, when I first got my start, games were 8 to 10 people for a large AAA game, what we would have called a large AAA game. Nowadays, you're talking thousands of people involved in game development. So it's an expensive, laborious, time-consuming process, and it's very complicated. And so with all these moving parts, all these moving people, it's hard to find people who really know how to get those projects over the finish line and out the door and get people excited about them. So most of our company is made up of people who have been doing this for a while, who are experienced. And because of that talent and that experience, we're in demand on large projects. So what we do is we come into a large project and we take over either a portion of that game or a feature of that game, or just some aspect or a port of it from one platform to another. We're brought in to help them get those games done and bring our expertise to the table. So with most games, you have things called features. You have, like, for instance, we work on something called WWE 2K, which is the World Wrestling series of games from 2K Publishing. 2K is the publisher of the game. They have a lot of features, and we're responsible for something called My Factions. So on that particular game, so amongst other things, so we do everything associated with My Faction. They design it at the 2K side, so they're like, okay, this is what we want to see. Here's how we want it to play out. But from within that, we have creativity within it to kind of make it look the way we want it look, have it play out the way we want to have it play out. So we crafted that feature for them wholesale back when they first contacted us in 2020. And we've been in charge of it ever since and really been building it and expanding it every year as they come out with new versions of that particular game. With other games, they might come in and say, hey, we need help with art or sound or programming, or for another game we work on, Amazon's New World, we're in charge of whole sections of their game world where they're like, okay, we want this whole little section here, or a particular campaign, they call it, within the game. We might be in charge of that entire campaign and all the art, programming, and design that are associated with it. So it really depends. We kind of can tailor what we do to the need, and companies will come to us and like, hey, we got this game. We need 40 people to do X, Y, or Z, or 100 people, or whatever that number is. And then we tailor teams to help them get those games out the door.
Okay. Okay. So that kind of gets into a little bit of the secret of your sauce, it sounds like. How do you, inspire your teams? How do you set your teams up for success and maintain that sort of creative entrepreneurial environment that Lost Boys is known, Lost Boys Interactive is known to have? How do you do?
Yeah, that's a real challenge for us because, like you said, we're a remote company. So all of our people work all around. Games about 10 years ago went through this fundamental transformation where you went from a game either made in a single room or a single building to now we have distributed development where games are made all around the world. So you would have teams in Sweden working with a team in the United States, working with a team in Indonesia, all of them working on the same code base, but creating within their different locations. Post COVID, that spread even further. Now you have people individually working all around the world, really, on these code bases. It was just a natural outgrowth of that distributed development. So as our company, our individuals are all working on a creative project remotely from various locations. So it's a unique challenge because a lot of people tell you it can't be done or it's really difficult to be creative with each other when working remotely. And so we had to really tackle that head on and be very proactive about it. No, we're going to be a remote company. We are going to embrace that and we're going to set up all of our processes to make sure that they are in support of that remote operation.
Mhm.
So we try to create a style and a feel within our company that I think is somewhat unique. We have this ethos we call magic, mischief, and mayhem that we sort of bring together to make people feel like they're part of a family. Because even though you are, say, yourself and you're working in Idaho because you have this cool place in Idaho you want to live, and I want to live and work there, and I want to have my kids there, but I'm working on this game that's based out of California but is sold all around the world. uh, we have to make sure you're tied to the project, you're tied to your team, and you're tied to the company. So we have to really instill a feeling of camaraderie within all those people, and it's a big part of our challenge to do that. But we feel like we've been able to do that by creating this sense of togetherness. We make people feel like they're part of a team and using that ethos. So magic is everybody's got to make something they feel is magic and cool and interesting, and constantly be innovating, constantly be creating something that you feel has that magic sense, like that sense of wonder. Like as I'm playing it or I'm seeing it for the first time, there's this sense of wonder and intrigue that is built into it. I want it to be a quality item.
Mhm.
Mischief is we don't do things just a staid way. There is no checklist. There is no. We have what we call production pipelines, but they're always innovating. They're always looking at it, trying to. Is there a better way to do this? Is there a way we can keep the quality but do it faster? Is there a different way to do this that makes it less strenuous or less stressful to get that thing out the door? So we're
Mhm.
always looking at our processes. And then mayhem is that everybody should be passionate about what they're doing. So when you're passionate, you're going to disagree and you're going to have arguments and you're going to not see eye to eye. But at the end of the day, that can never be personal. That we are all a family. At the end of the day, we all go around the campfire and sing and enjoy ourselves and be comrades in arms, even though maybe we were fighting over something during the day. So it's always a sense of that, going back to the Peter Pan sense of the Lost Boys. They may be scrapping all day long, but at night they're a family, and so we try to instill that in our teams as well.
That's terrific. You have a framework, and there's a lot of freedom. It seems like within that framework of mischief, mayhem, and what was the first one?
Magic.
Magic. Magic comes first,
Yep.
but obviously, a magic comes afterwards as well, and a finished product. But I like the sound of that framework. It gives people a real good idea of clarity around how the business works, but yet gives them a lot of creative control to come up with some pretty interesting concepts and ideas, and ultimately a solution. But then you added that piece about conflict in there, and that sounds real interesting as well, because a lot of people are afraid of conflict
No,
out
absolutely. I think a lot of companies shy away or fear conflict. If you give a framework for conflict, I feel like you have a better chance of succeeding with that conflict because you can't make it personal. You can't be biting at each other. The idea is at the end of the day, whatever we're working on is a better thing. So if you're passionate about it, you should be fighting for what you want to happen. But at the end of the day, you can't get personal. You can't really fight one another. You will have conflict. It's inevitable in any business, in any endeavor, you're going to have conflict. And just if you try to sweep it under the rug or push it aside, then you have no outlet for it. And then it just builds up under the surface until it explodes. And if you give a conduit for that conflict, but then put a parameter on it, hey, at the end of the day, we work together, we're fighting for the same goals. And if we're not fighting for the same goals, then we need to stop, take a step back and figure out what's going on. Because at the end of the day, if you're passionate about what you want and I'm passionate about what I want, we should both be building towards the same solution, the same success. And if one of us is wrong, should be big enough to admit that and be like, okay, yeah, you know what, your idea, I wasn't cool on it at first, but I understand you now. Your passion's coming through. My idea maybe isn't as good as yours. I'm going to let you, let's go with your idea. So give a conduit for it, but not make it personal. Not maybe hey, you suck. don't.
Yeah.
Your ideas are terrible. Go away. It's no,
Yeah.
fight for your idea rather than against the other person.
And all the crazy stuff that starts to happen behind the scenes that you don't even know about, right? Making sure that
Right.
that doesn't happen. And we can agree to disagree. And maybe your idea was better. All right, we're done with the discussion and even the conflict. Let's go with it. And I'm going to support it, even though I don't totally agree with it. That's and we're going to have a great product because I may have influenced you just a little bit with my idea around, even though we had conflict, but that's essential. It seems like it's an essential element of coming up with something that's why we're together. That's why we're working on this project together, because
well, in our business especially, everything is a process of adaptation. So you're always taking other people's ideas and adapting them into your plan. And no plan survives first contact with the enemy, as they used to say in the military. You can't have a plan and just be like, oh no, we're sticking to it no matter what. At the same time, you shouldn't give it up at the first sign of difficulty. You have to have some mungibility and some adaptability. So at the end of the day, you're like, okay, here's my central vision. This is what we're building toward. We're hitting a roadblock. Okay, what do we need to do? Do we need to rethink the idea? You should never be afraid of reevaluating where you are on the plan and whether the plan continues to make sense towards that vision.
Sure. I could see, definitely if you didn't have that in place, you kind of go down a hole, and the customer's not going to be interested in your end product then if you don't have a chance to come out of that hole a little bit and have a good check-in. Tell me a little bit about work-life balance, because it sounds like people could be working 24/7 and have a lot of fun in this environment. I mean, there's a campfire. I heard about that, but
well, as I got older, so I will say when I was earlier in the industry, I was terrible at that. I was working all the time. It was difficult. I was pouring my heart and soul into everything and not really evaluating, okay, is it worth pouring my heart and soul into this aspect, or am I working smart? Like people get offended by the term, are you working smarter but not harder?
Yeah.
Because I know some people get really offended when you say work smarter but not harder, but it's not an admonition. It's not you're an idiot. It's like, think about what you're doing. Like, because everybody can put effort into everything they do. Effort itself is not a solution. Smart effort is something you need to plan toward. And are you wasting your time at the end of the day? And as a younger person in my industry, I used to waste a lot of time. I'd work. I often would work 18-hour days. It was just, but I was burning myself out. I wasn't getting as much done, and you get into this doom loop where you're working more hours but getting less and less done. Your productivity goes down. As I got older, I learned to really balance myself out more, and now I turn it off. Weekends are mine. If it's an emergency, sure, but it better be a real emergency. But I'm not, if you're calling me at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night with something I can wait till Monday, that's a waste of your time. It's a waste of my time. You're taking away from my recharge ability. All of us, especially in my industry, it's a creative industry. And if we're going to stay creative, we can't get into a mindset of just drudgery. It's going to bring you down. It's going to make you less creative and less innovative. You have to recharge. And the things that you do in your life outside of your business are kind of what influence you in your business. And if you have no outside life, outside influences, outside things you enjoy to do, you're just going to get into this rut where you're not going to innovate, and you're just going to be constantly doing the rote thing day in, day out. So for me, I turn it off Friday night, and I'm not worrying about it until Monday morning. I turn it off at night, and I don't worry about it until the morning. Now, that doesn't mean I don't check my email. It doesn't mean I don't check we're all tied to our devices, and they all are blinking in your face when stuff comes up. I still do that, but I just push the worry off unless it's an actual emergency. If it's a true emergency, boom, I'm right there. I'm ready to roll. I am sober about it. But if you're like, I used to find myself like, missing events with my kids, or missing events with, things that with my spouse, and you have to prioritize. And I feel like work-life balance becomes critical. And so as our company, we really push, look, if you're working too many hours, you need to have a conversation with your supervisor. It's something I brief every new employee on. I'm like, look, life balance is a two-way street. If you just find yourself working 80, 90 hours a week without any kind of feedback, without any kind of discussion, that's partially on you. You need to be having those conversations. If I'm asking you, oh, do this, and it's like, oh, that's going to take, I don't have enough hours in the week to be able to do this, then you need to be having a conversation like, hey, we need to discuss that, and we need to rebalance and make sure that I do have a work-life balance. And I talk about the pendulum to work versus life. And if the pendulum is all the way to work, you need to stop, have a conversation. Let's discuss it. Let's get you back to a work-life balance. Because if you're burnt out, you're no good to me as a long-term employee. And we want you to be a long-term employee. We want all of our employees to be with us as long as we possibly can. People move on, but we don't want them to have to move on because they just can't take it anymore.
Right, right. That's excellent. So it's part of your culture as well. And a big piece of what leaders do is have conversations around that balance. It sounds like.
Yeah, and our industry especially has a reputation for something called we call crunch mode, which is when people work very long hours. Early in my career, I can honestly say I slept under my desk and would go home on the weekend to get a change of clothes and a shower and right back to it. And our industry is notorious for burning people out in older days, and I would say that has changed. That culture has changed much over the years, which is good, and a lot of us fought hard to get it to change over the years, but it still maintains that lingering reputation. Now it's kind of swinging the other way, where people are afraid to do even an hour of extra work. And the thing we say is, look, you're professional, and in any professional endeavor, you're going to work overtime.
Yeah.
You're just going to. But the idea is that you pace it, you make sure that you prioritize, if you're going to work overtime, that it is only because you need to get this thing done, and that it is only as much time as you need to get this thing done. That we are not going to go into what we used to call crunch mode, where you just work endlessly and never really have a life beyond that. Crunch mode for us now means a few extra hours on a milestone, or a few extra hours a month if needed. And if you don't need it, you don't do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It sounds like something that you have to keep an eye on, right?
You do, absolutely. And if it gets out of hand, what are you doing to support your people so that it doesn't get out of hand? And what are you doing to support them so that if they do need to work 3, 4, or 5 extra hours on a milestone, which is typically 2 weeks, or on a greater project scope, that it doesn't become too much, but for that period of time, we are supporting them.
Yeah, I suppose some of that could be upfront. It could be just social things, right? I think calling the HR department.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we have a very robust HR department that we are constantly talking to. Like, what can we do to improve things? How do we?
Yeah.
Mental health is a big focus for us, making sure that people understand like issues that might be affecting them, ways they can deal with it, making sure they have support mechanisms both within the company, without, to help them with their mental health.
It could really be also a lot, I bet, on the commercial side. It certainly is in other businesses, that really understanding what the pain point or the issue is that we're trying to solve, and in this case with the design and the look and feel, and those aspects that you work with all the time with the customer, making sure there's good clarity around that. Because
And at the end of the day, we're making games which are supposed to be fun. And if you're not having fun making games, then you're not doing it right. You need to stop and figure out, what are we doing? How do we mess this up? How can we fix this?
Absolutely. As you look at the future, anything you can share with us about the industry and AI coming into this and
Sure.
your
Oh,
company
that's
in
a whole topic
particular?
in and of itself. So yeah, well, the industry right now, I don't think it's any secret if you do any kind of Google search right now, the industry is going through a tough period. During COVID, everybody was stuck at home and you had nothing to do. So you were either watching the Tiger King or you're playing video games, and that caused people to flood money into our industry. So suddenly everything was exploding. Everything looked great, and the sales went way up during COVID. But then COVID ended, and everybody wanted to go outside and touch grass and breathe air and just not be thinking about the things they were doing when they were doing COVID. And so that leveled out. I mean, it didn't go down. We're still above pre-COVID,
Mhm.
but it flattened out, and that caused a panic in our industry. So and that combined with the fact that money is no longer cheap, their interest rates have gone up, uh, has caused a retrenchment, I would say, in our industry. There's been a lot of layoffs in our industry, and it's caused a lot of concern and fear, and everybody's feeling this sort of dread waiting until the next upcycle, which we expect to happen next year and the year after. We expect a big upcycle. But these last 2 years have been really tough. And so there's been a lot of fear and loathing in our industry because it's been somewhat flat, although the number is huge. I don't know if people realize video games are, according to ESA, which is our trade organization, video games globally are $180 billion business.
Wow.
It's a big business. It's bigger than movies are only 30 billion.
Right.
Music is only a $30 billion industry. We're $180 billion, but we're flat right now. So everybody's panicking, freaking out, and there were layoffs and a lot of uncertainty in our industry. I think that is coming to an end, or will soon come to an end, but it's still continuing into the end of this year. But I think then you will start to see that upscale again. So I think that's a good thing ultimately. But right now there is a lot of, how do I keep a job? How do I get a job? How do I maintain a job? And that is something that's somewhat widespread across our industry. Thankfully, I think that will be ending, but it's been a rough go these last 18 months or so.
Okay.
And because of that, you have things like AI. Like, how is AI going to impact me? Everybody just assumes that, as a boss, I'm just going to, you're fired, but I hired this AI that's going to do your job for you. And we're in a creative industry. And to me, AI is a tool. And there's this weird fear of AI. I get it. If you're a horse driver in 1890, you're out of a job in 20 years. Absolutely. And there's that fear now. But that didn't mean there are less jobs now than in 1890. There were new jobs and different jobs. And would you say, no, we can't? There's this weird sort of, I hate to say, Luddite effect, where people are like, oh God, we can't go forward. We have to maintain what we got now. And if we had done that in 1890, everybody be driving horse and buggies still.
Yeah.
And the world moved on, the world changed, and the world always changes. So what happens? Does that mean some jobs will go away? I think yes, some jobs will go away, but there are going to be so many more opportunities and so many jobs opening up, at least, and I'm speaking only within our industry. You're not gonna just fire every artist, fire every musician, fire every creative. Creativity ultimately comes from the human mind. But then you look at AI. What does AI do? AI looks at things, analyzes things, and comes up with amalgamations of those things, which is exactly what you do as an individual. In my industry, if you're an artist, I'll say, hey, go make me this picture of this thing. You're going to go out and you're going to look at a million different reference pieces. You're going to be like, okay, well, I want to combine elements of this and combine elements of that and combine elements of that and put them together into this thing.
Yeah.
What AI does is it does that times 10,000. It's just better at that process than you are. But it doesn't come up with new things. You, the human being, come up with the new thing. So what's going to happen is artists are going to utilize AI as a tool in their arsenal. Sound artists are going to use AI as a tool within their arsenal. Going back to art, you don't paint on a canvas anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If you paint on a digital tablet onto a monitor, that's not cheating. That's using a tool to better how you do things. Because painting, you could still go paint a canvas and take a picture of it, but it's a laborious, slow process. It's not competitive. You're not going to be competitive unless your goal is to make art for museums. Then that's great. But if you're a commercial artist making commercial art, you have to use commercial art tools. And AI is just another tool that will get you there. So I don't think we're going to lose net jobs, but I do think those jobs are going to change, and change scares the hell out of everybody. And I look at like the example of, I'm sure you've probably watched a Star Trek episode in your day. They have this thing called the holodeck where everybody goes into the holodeck and somebody says, give me a street in France in 1872. And boom, they make this street. Well, the entire ship doesn't stop and construct a set. That's AI tools. That is AI going, okay, here you go. And everybody wants that holodeck. Everybody's, as long as it doesn't try to kill you like it does in half of those episodes. But everybody wants to, I want to create a world where I can go give me a street in France in 1873, and I want to walk around and look at the sites and meet people from that period and have a conversation with them. Well, that was AI on Star Trek. That they couldn't have done that without AI. That is basically what everybody wants, that thing, but they don't want the things that will get us there. Yeah. And that doesn't mean those people are all out of work. Everybody has something to do, and there's still going to be creatives, and there's still going to be creative jobs. They're just going to use these AI tools to do the things they want to do. And it's going to be a road for us to get from here to there, because I think there's a lot of paranoia and fear over what AI is, and people imagine the Terminator coming to your door and shooting your family, and there's this irrational fear of it, and it's like, okay, what is it? And we're still defining it. Mm-hmm. We're still making up what it is. We still control what the rules are, but it's going to change. It's already changing the impact. I mean, look at the industries out there now. Teaching is a different industry because of AI. I mean, when I was 8 years old, I couldn't just go online and have it write a paper for me. But there are tools to check for that, right? And that means fundamentally we need to change how we educate. So it's not just give me 5,000 words on the Spanish Inquisition, that you can then go to Google, or go to Chat APT and say, make me a 5,000 word treatise on the Spanish Inquisition, and then hand it to my teacher. Now you're going to have to change how you teach. It is fundamentally going to change how we live, but we shouldn't allow it to change who we are. Mm-hmm. We should be utilizing these as tools, not as handcuffs on our future.
Yeah, for sure.
But in my industry, everybody's terrified they're going to lose their job, and I get it. Because I can make a cool looking picture on Image FX in 5 seconds.
Well, you also get it.
But is that useful?
Yeah. No, you also get it because it's different, and this is change, and this is how people react to change. And there are those that are going to react and not do anything about it and just sort of deny it. And there's those that are going to try and react and grab it and try and do something new with it.
And there's a lot of people looking at it as, how can I make this work for me? Yeah. And those people are going to win.
Those are the ones that are going to be on the cutting edge, right? On the front of it. And there's some pain there too, right? And
absolutely. Change doesn't come without pain. Our society is definitely going to be different on the other end. But we have to, rather than put our head in the sand and just try to deny it, we have to figure out, okay, how are we going to make sure we maintain who we are as a society, as beings moving forward within those new rules of what AI is bringing to the table. Yeah. And AI is not stopping. It's continuing to do its thing. It's going to get more elaborate. The stuff I look at just from 18 months ago to what right now is just so extravagantly different than what it was then. And it's just going to grow exponentially.
There's so much data out there that we're not using today. And if we have a way of synthesizing that data quickly to come up with something that makes sense, that's what it sounds like, one of the aspects of AI anyway. Any other thoughts or ideas that you'd like to impart on our audience, which is really around simplifying as we grow? Sure. And, AI is another piece that comes in and can cause complexity, but it can also help us simplify. Well,
that's just it. I think simplify is a great way to put it, because I think right now we live such so much more complicated lives. I look back, if you're a businessman in the 1870s, you might have had to at one point get on a trip that took you months away from where your home office was, and you had no way really to communicate other than say a telegram, which may have taken days to get where you were going. Nowadays, I can be in Singapore working remotely. No one knows the difference in the day-to-day operations of my business. I could be literally any in the world doing the things I do day to day. That changes how things are, but you have to remain core to you. What are your beliefs? What are your core values? What are you working toward? And I feel like the world has gotten so much faster. Even there's certain things I do. I think everybody has to decide what they're going to do. Social media for me, I shut down a lot. I don't participate as much in social media, and I'm kind of awed by the people who embrace it, and like every 5 minutes they're posting something about some initiative or something they're doing, and everyone looks like they're constantly busy, and I just sort of push that aside. I'm like, look, when I have something to say on social media, I'll say it on social media, but if I don't, why am I wasting my time? And I feel like that's a good friend of mine is a marketer. He said, once you feed the social media beast, you can't stop feeding it. It becomes this constant thing. And if you stop feeding it for 2 minutes, you're forgotten and moved over. And so I just choose not to play. I'm like, all right, if people want to follow me, and people do follow me, and I don't ask them to, but they do. And so when I say something, I get people like, oh, hey, I'll get a comment from somebody. I'm like, I don't ask you to follow me, but they do, because every once in a while I'll say something I feel important and I'll say it, but that's it. I feel like we've fallen too far into a hot take culture, and that has complicated all of our lives, because the hot take is the worst take, because you're instantly reacting in the moment, and you don't stop, you don't think about it, you're just reacting. And you may say something in their reaction, it's just profoundly stupid. And if you had just stopped and thought about it, mulled it over overnight, or just slept on it, you probably would have had a much better reaction. But in that 2 seconds of reaction, you're either angry or you're passionate, or you're just, you're reacting, and it's a human thing. But we don't allow ourselves to be human anymore. And I think you do have to simplify and be like, okay, you know what? Do I really need to react to this right now? Can it wait 24 hours? Can I mull this over? Can I think it over? Can I talk about it with my closest friends, or my family, and then create a response or a statement? So yeah, that's one thing I personally do. I'm not recommending everybody does that, especially in our world that is social media dependent, it seems, on success. But I think you got to find, like, where are your rules, and then don't break them. What are your personal rules, and just make your life that core.
Yeah, very good, very good. It comes back to those values and your rules, and as you move forward, and simplification definitely is important for it. Always for us to be looking at. I had this garden because I have kids that are relatively young, and
Sure.
We want to grow everything, right? We want to grow corn, we want to grow some pumpkins and some squash, and we're living in a little city lot. And boy, if you saw that thing, we had pumpkins about the size of,
Yeah, you got to pick.
Yeah,
got to pick.
Yeah, it's a nice creative mess that we had there, and a lot of weeds, and didn't know really what we were trying to grow. And that's important, I think, with all the different tools that we have at our fingertips, that at times we just remember, let's go back and get clarity around what we're trying to do, where we're
Yeah,
trying to
absolutely.
go.
Don't be afraid to shuffle it. We were talking offline earlier about, I moved a lot in my early career, and moving is frustrating because you have to get to know new people, you have to get new ways, you have to get used to a new place. But I haven't moved in 11 years. And one of the things I missed about moving was that it forces you to reorganize your life. And so you kind of have to have that mentality. I think even if you're staying where you're at, you have to have that mentality. I'm going to sit down and reshuffle everything. I'm going to shake it up, reinvent, what I'm doing right now, because you have to do that, or you're not living if you're not redefining who you are every once in a while.
That's great advice. Great advice to take to the real world of business too. Tim, this has been great. I think we could continue to go on and have a great discussion and a great podcast. I don't know.
All right.
I think a lot of people would be interested in listening to it as well, because there's so much that's going on in this world today that sometimes it's good just to realize that you're not alone, and that a lot of people are working through the same things with all the technology changes and the change
Absolutely.
in general. And podcast Simplify and Grow is a key piece of for me is about getting that message out there. And you're right, I'm not a big podcaster either. I'm not a big social media person, but I'm sure I'm glad that we had this conversation,
Oh, me too.
that you shared your thoughts and your ideas and experiences. It's clear that Lost Boys Interactive is really got a great culture for shaping the future of the video gaming industry, and I'm sure that it's just the beginning, and it sounds like a great place to be. So thank you for being part of this today, and for those that are at home and watching this, until next time, let's keep simplifying and growing. And again, Tim, appreciate you for being part of this today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and I hope people took something away from it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Simplify, Lead, and Grow podcast. We hope this episode provided you with valuable insights and actionable strategies to apply in your leadership journey. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and leaving a review to help us reach more listeners. Be sure to share this podcast with fellow leaders ready to simplify their approach, lead with purpose, and grow their business. Until next time, continue to lead with passion and grow with purpose.